You may notice that this was called a round table. In fact, there is not a table, not even a round table. The structure of the evening, as I see it, if I may use a more culinary metaphor, is like a shish kebab. That is, we'll go down the line of the poster, alternating more or less poets and critics. That's the basic idea. We will read, when necessary, the translations, even including translation from English, when the English poems published in the journal have been also translated in Italian, and you'll see how it works as we go on. The journal is available for the moment, only the page proof. This is the journal, actually, and this is our logo, Italian Poetry Review, and very soon the full volume will be available, and all the information about subscriptions is available in the hall. The first poet I want to introduce is not with us here, and normally I don't allow text to be read in the absence of the author because it doesn't have the right effect. But I'll go back to him later on in a moment. For the moment, I simply want to introduce, to make my little intervention on as an introduction to the first set of remarks. As I say, we're alternating critical remarks and poetry readings. And Achille Vanti spared me the trouble of going through the whole program of the journal that is summarized very ably. I will go straight to the title, for which I take responsibility: Poetry in Italy, Poetry in America. It would have been syntactically smoother, I suppose, to say Poetry in Italy and America. Smoother but misleading because it suggests a continuity and similarity that do not really exist. When we speak, as in the program of the journal, we do speak of the comparison between the current state of Italian and American poetry. The comparison we talk about is the difficult task of comparing two very different worlds. And the reasons for this are many. I'll mention only two. Just at the moment in which the American poetry world has been critically re-examined, his own connection to colleges and universities in the light of some popular and populistic manifestos, the role of creative writing program has been questioned for a while. Just at this moment, we Italian poets are engaged in a necessary task to make Italian departments in America and literary departments in Italian universities aware of the essential role of the creative writing programs. Another element of divergence is the political context. Poets routinely and demurely assert their independence from politics, which in most cases is true if one adopts a narrow and rather superficial construction of the concept of politics. But if one looks at politics as life in the polis, or to use a term that has become fashionable in the United States in the wake of the belated diffusion of Gramsci's work, and it is experiencing its own peculiar revival in post-Gramscian Italy, if you use, I mean, the term of civil society, we soon realize that poetry is deeply entangled with civil society, and we realize that the worlds of civil society in Italy and America are vastly different. And, I hasten to add, whereas the status of civil society in Italy is considerably better than it would appear from the complacent anti-Italian cliches too readily adopted even by otherwise respectable newspapers, the state of civil society in the United States today is, even after November 4th, considerably worse than the propaganda of American exceptionalism would like us to believe. It is interesting to me, and interesting to me is a euphemism, I should say bewildering, how easily poets, American and Italian, those supposedly critical, even prophetic observers of society, espouse socio-political cliches. We have a problem here. And I mention problem. This is not an idyllic set of self-congratulations, but opening a lot of critical remarks and commentaries that will follow. Allow me one last point that in a certain sense leads me back to the already mentioned difference between the position of poetry within the two different academic worlds. Italian poetry as a practice is, as I noted, unfortunately almost completely absent from Italian universities. No poetry workshop, no creative writing workshops, and so forth and so on. And this is damaging to its practice and training. But it does not as a subject of study, it is not, I am happy to report, in an in-battle position. The status of poetry as a subject of study, as a discipline, is in the Italian academic culture solid and assured. The American situation, on the other hand, is disquietingly different. For all the beautiful development that we are trying to imitate of creative writing workshop, poetry has been put on the defensive, it seems to me, in the ideological world, the very word that trips on my tongue, in the ideological world of American humanities, which finds fiction much more amenable to moralistic and ideological lecturing. I think this is a danger, and we should be strongly aware of it. So the problems, the plus and minuses of the two semiospheres, if you want to be technical, of the two poetic worlds are kind of balancing each other. We have problems in America, we have problems in Italy. They are different, and we have to deal with this. Now, IPR is not IPR meaning Italian Poetry Review. From now on, I'll refer to this just not to go on too long, but is, of course, not the solution, not the answer to these problems, but we are analyzing this situation, and we are bringing our own modest contribution to encourage the theory and practice of poetry amidst very difficult circumstances in today's world on both sides of the Atlantic. So much for my remarks.